In the spring of 2017, a man named Billy McFarland tried and failed to create a music festival. Many of you might remember the scandal. McFarland, along with his company Fyre Media, along with Ja Rule and Jerry Media, sold people a fake music festival. The media rollout for the festival included acts like Blink-182, Major Lazer, and Kanye West's label Good Music. The ads promised a super luxurious experience, claiming the festival would be held on a private island, there would be supermodels, celebrity chefs, attendees would be lodged in personal bungalows and villas. It sounded like a really good time if you had the money. But of course, it was not to be. McFarland and company were trying to put a brand new music festival together in only 4 months, something that is completely unheard of. Based on what they promised, they would have needed a year and a half to actually get the festival ready. And in all likelihood, the ticket prices, which were already high, weren't going to be enough to cover the actual costs of the festival. The organizers of Fyre Festival used a common startup strategy, focusing on growing a user base and securing investors over making a profit. They managed to drum up a lot of social media buzz with the help of Jerry Media's marketing campaign. They sold out their general admission tickets almost instantly, but because they hadn't actually run the numbers on how much the festival would cost, they were still scrambling for money. This lack of planning and shortage of funds led to a situation where, once the attendees arrived, Fyre Festival was in chaos.
As soon as you get to the entrance...
Oh, God. Oh.
It was just this mad dash to claim your tent.
Shit. It's definitely a state of panic.
They're just telling everyone it's a free-for-all to just find an empty tent and grab it, so this whole place is pretty fucked.
They did their best to distract ticket holders with alcohol and what pitiful food they could scrape together, but it was clear to everyone that Fyre Festival was not going to happen. Their lodgings ended up being old FEMA tents, all of the mattresses were completely waterlogged, and all of the musical acts pulled out of the festival. 2 years later, these events were all recounted by Hulu's documentary Fyre Fraud. And 4 days after that, Netflix recounted the same events in their documentary Fyre, the Greatest Festival That Never Happened. And that brings us to our topic today.
Tell me sweet little lies.
I'm Will, and today I want to talk to you about 2 documentaries that were released 4 days apart on competing platforms about the exact same event. The existence of these 2 films gives us a pretty rare chance to see firsthand how documentaries can lie. Now, documentaries rarely lie in a direct way. They certainly can, but these lies are pretty easy to catch, so directors rarely take the direct approach. You couldn't make a documentary about, let's say, cats, and say that cats can fly when the moon is full. People would Google it, or start throwing their pets around the room once a month to see for themselves. When it comes to documentaries, the much more common lie is a lie by omission. It's the information they don't tell you that's important. And with that in mind, let's take a look at our 2 documentaries. Both documentaries are remarkably similar. Maybe not too much of a surprise given that they're about the same events, but they really do hit all the same beats and cover the same main events. They both mention Billy McFarland's previous scam, Magnesis. They cover his weird relationship with Ja Rule.
Where is Ja?
They have interviews with the creator of the Fyre Fraud Twitter account. They mention Jerry Media's involvement with the advertising, and they also cover the wages stolen from the workers on Great Eczema. They both center around the same message. Billy McFarland is a con man who defrauded investors, patrons, and employees in pursuit of a pipe dream of a music festival. They offer critiques of the culture around social media influencers, millennials as a whole, and the style of business that Billy was running. And both docs are good. I've enjoyed watching them both, and it's tough to pick a favorite. They each have their strengths and weaknesses. Netflix has the better looking documentary. From the footage it uses to the editing, it just feels like a more professional, higher budget experience. The Hulu doc tends to be more humorous, really focusing on the absurdity of the whole situation, without ignoring the real tragedies that happened along the way. One of the most entertaining sections of Hulu's documentary is the interviews it has with influencers who attended and advertised for the festival. They bring in 2 influencers and ask them about their jobs. They ask them what having a personal brand means and what that brand means to their audience. And their answers to that question are hilariously vapid. Previously in the film, we've been primed to see influencers as vain at best and at worst complete frauds. And then we see both of these influencers give almost the exact same response, vaguely describing their platforms as ones that push for positivity, whatever that means.
When you say my brand, what do you mean by that?
When I say my brand, I just mean kind of like the lifestyle that I want to live. So positivity,
health, wellness, and honestly, just like positivity.
And there's an important editing choice where the camera just holds on the man after he gives his answer, sitting in silence after he just unknowingly revealed that he's an empty vessel. The lie this film is telling you here is tough to spot. In fact, it might not be a lie at all, which is what makes it so tricky. The lie is that you aren't seeing the whole interview. Sure, the influencers are in charge of what they say, but it's the filmmaker who decides what goes in the movie. And they are free to take whatever the interviewees say out of context or completely rearrange it in editing. We saw how the film can manufacture an awkward pause, making the speaker's words seem less truthful. But what I'm trying to say is, given the time constraints of a documentary, plus the fact that all filmmakers are pushing some sort of narrative, interviews will never be fair to the interviewee. That's something that really all documentaries do. The filmmakers control the information. And with that in mind, let's take a look at who these filmmakers are. Something that can teach you a lot about what a documentary is trying to do is looking at who made it. Not just the director, but the producers as well. Where did the money come from to make this movie? And is there anything about the filmmakers that might impact how they frame information? Any respectable English teacher will teach you to do this while reading or citing articles. If you're reading an article about climate change, you should probably double check to make sure it isn't written by an oil company or someone getting paid by an oil company. The same thing applies to documentaries. In fact, that's probably a comparison you should make with every documentary you see. Documentaries are a combination of journalism and artistic expression, but I feel like we don't always consume documentaries that way. The blend of information with entertainment can sometimes result in people taking whatever the documentary asserts at face value, without any further investigation into the vested interests of the creators. Fortunately, our two Fyre docs let us take a look at how these interests can shape the final product. The Hulu doc actually draws attention to this, not only bringing up the competing Netflix documentary, but also calling them out for being co-produced by none other than Jerry Media, the company that did the advertising for Fyre Festival in the first place. Remember how I said that the Netflix documentary tended to have better looking footage? That's largely because it looks like it's old, unused advertising footage, which naturally Jerry Media had access to. So you can see how this connection helped the documentary in terms of securing footage, but it also hurt its credibility. There's an interview with the CEO of Jerry Media in the Netflix film, where he claims that his company bears no responsibility for what happened with the Fyre Festival and that they had no idea that there was trouble going on, that they were only doing their jobs and that they were victims of McFarlane's along with everyone else. And this isn't like the influencer interviews in the Hulu documentary. This testimony is completely unchallenged in the film. It's meant to be taken as fact.
The media and marketing companies in New York, we didn't have any visibility into what was happening on the production side. We're building out this vision that was based around this kind of visual facade.
This is another way documentaries can lie to you, by presenting someone's opinion or presenting someone that has every reason to lie and not actually challenging their testimony or drawing attention to why they might be lying. If you knew who this documentary was made by, then the testimony of the CEO of Jerry Media would seem a lot more dubious than it does in the actual film. I really can't see the way he's framed in this documentary as anything outside of deception. Most viewers aren't going to go and look up who made this movie because they aren't expecting one of the producers to come on acting like any other interviewee. He is credited in the opening credits of the film, but no one memorizes the names of the opening credits. So when you get to his interview and he's only listed as the CEO of Jerry Media, that's very misleading. The only time the film actually acknowledges that it was co-created by Jerry Media is during the end credits of the film. And if you're watching on Netflix, the only way to legally watch this film, then the credits shoot up to the top left of the screen and you're encouraged to go on and watch something else. So you can see how this information might alter how you watch the film. If you watched a documentary about a bridge collapse and then found out that one of the producers was the company who designed the bridge, that might raise some questions. Or if you were watching a documentary about a famous criminal and that documentary had an interview with the subject of their film, but then you found out that to get that interview, the filmmakers had to give that criminal, let's say, $100,000 in order to get him in the room. That might also change your perception of the film. And if you've seen Hulu's documentary, that is exactly what happened. One of the most interesting aspects of Hulu's documentary is that they actually put Billy McFarland in front of a camera. Watching this con man spin lies right in front of you is really something to see. It's a really important aspect of the documentary, but this interview came at a cost, literally. The man who hurt so many people with his festival actually profited off the documentary that revealed his crimes. Now, there's actually some disagreement over how much they paid him for this interview. Billy claims it was $250,000, while Jenner First, one of the directors, claims it was less than that. Billy is almost always lying, but the fact that First isn't revealing the actual number leads me to believe that it's still embarrassingly high. And this is a real moral dilemma for the documentary. Billy was already being charged, and the film wasn't really pursuing justice for anyone else. It was going more for entertainment and a simple message about con men being bad and social media being dangerous. They made this decision solely to make their documentary more entertaining. A documentary that had a message that really wasn't all that necessary. So that leaves us with the question of, is it okay that Billy made money off of this documentary? Well, I do think it's really funny that he conned a bunch of rich people. And I think that separating a wealthy fool from their money is generally a good thing.
We didn't want neighbors. Our strategy from there was to kind of ransack all the tents around us. Just started poking holes and flipping mattresses, and my buddy pissed on a few of the beds.
Like, it should probably be legal to defraud this man. I think we can all agree on that. But there were also plenty of regular people who were hurt by this festival going under, most of them being workers on Great Eczema. This woman lost her life savings because of Billy. While the fact that Billy profited off this documentary would probably greatly interest viewers, the creators decided to leave it out, to either hide their own embarrassment or to make themselves appear more credible. Funnily enough, even after hearing about the sketchy backgrounds of these documentaries, I still found them both very entertaining. Billy McFarland is a captivating character, and I do mean character. It's important to remember that a lot of documentaries are made with the primary intent of entertaining you, and they almost always carry whatever sort of ideology or message the creators are trying to push. With these films as an example, they both seem to want you to be more critical of social media, as well as be wary of anything that sounds too good to be true. But they don't seem to really push further than that. They briefly allude to the connection between what Billy did and how a lot of companies today seem to be running entirely off of investors rather than any actual profit. They could go into what that might mean for our economy, but they really don't. They could look into how many companies and wealthy patrons of the festival were able to seek legal action, but the largely black working class day laborers on Great Eczema were unable to do the same. Maybe they don't think wage theft is a problem. Maybe they think our economy's just fine. Or they might just not think it's very entertaining. Most documentaries that want a high budget aren't going to be talking about anything too radical or uncomfortable. The creators are largely wealthy and probably don't want to change the status quo too much, or they just want to sell the movie to as many different types of people as they can. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't watch documentaries. I'm really just trying to say that documentaries, in one way or another, by necessity, will lie to you. But you should still watch them. Many documentaries out there have gotten people interested in niche topics, made people become activists, or even gotten people out of prison. Just know that you need to be careful. If you see a documentary that really impacts you, maybe take a look at who made it, who paid for it, and what else have they worked on. Are there any other sources that might have another take on what you just saw? When covering any topic, a good documentary doesn't end the discussion, it pushes it forward. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and please consider subscribing or leaving a comment about what you thought. Goodbye!
If you had thousands of dollars to go on a trip to see Blink 182, that's on you. That is Darwinism at its finest.